Testing.
Sorry about that.
Back of the room, raise your hand if you can hear me. Appreciate you all.
Sorry.
And then they said that they're going to do more.
Testing.
Sorry, Jada. Sorry, Kate.
Coming. Yeah. I'm glad you're here, though. All right, you know y'all can't sit in here.
I need more water. Okay, you got it super fast. Okay.
Testing. 1, 2, back of the room.
Are you ready? We gotta go.
Testing. Back of the room.
Thank you, sir. Welcome to see you. Make sure to turn it on.
Welcome to Grayson County. My name is Glenn Melausson. I am the chair of the Grayson County Democratic Party. I am also on the executive committee for the state of Texas Democratic Party. And we are going to take that award coming to
Let's slide by
our
one more
town.
time. With that hat.
So I'm a history professor, and my wife Jackie is a school counselor. We're in the future business. We help kids build a better future for themselves. We are all here today because we want a better Texas. We want our children and our grandchildren to have a brighter tomorrow.
Yes.
We know the problems that are facing Texas because they are created in Austin by Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick. Beto is going to be part of a solution. A solution based on trust. We're going to trust public school teachers to teach the facts. We are going to trust women when they walk into a doctor's office. We are going to trust each and every one of you to choose who you want to love and who you want to live with. Trust you, not the politicians in Austin. We are going to have a better deal. So I've got a couple of people I'd like to introduce you to that are our VIPs here. One is the mayor of this great city, Dee Welch. Dee, where you at? He understands what Southern hospitality means, and he's here to greet our special guests. We also have Hero Amir running for Texas, for the U.S. Congress in Texas 4th District. We have Liz Slagle, the daughter, and Susan Slagle, the daughter and wife of Bob Slagle. Well, I was a long-time Texas Democratic Party chair, recently passed away, so you do have our sympathy. We have Denny Hook, who is running for county judge in Cook County. And John Angus, who was the former county chair of Cook County, but he's here with us right across the border. John Angus. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you our next governor and the future for Texas, Shadow O'Rourke.
This is the second time in this campaign that we get to be with you in this county. Glenn introduced us when we were at 903 Brewing. No offense to the other brewers in the state, but the best beer for my money as far as I'm concerned. Especially because the six-pack was free. But we're so grateful to you all. There's so many things you could be doing tonight with your families, with your kids, recovering from a day at work or at school, just trying to relax right now. But you came out not for the candidate, not for the political party, but for the future of this state, the future of our country. This is a defining moment of truth, and we're going to use it with everything that we've got. There are folks in office who will try to tell you who you're supposed to be against, who you're supposed to be afraid of, who you're supposed to hate based on the differences that they want to divide us. Let's begin this evening by describing who we're for. I'm for the veteran who willingly enlisted, put her life on the line for this country, was willing to sacrifice it not for the president, not for a political party, but for our Constitution, for our democracy, for our way of life. I'm for that veteran who tonight, in the 9th largest economy on planet Earth, that has no lack of resources, will still be sleeping under a bridge or on the side of the road or in a public park, because we have yet to find the political will to make sure that they have a home. The veteran who came back with PTSD or traumatic brain injury from Korea or Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq and still can't get into the VA to see that provider that might be able to save his life. That veteran who doesn't want to be prescribed an opioid to which he may become addicted and from which he may die. That veteran who just came back breathing in God only knows what from those toxic burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan, and wants somebody to stand up for them, to make sure that they can breathe okay now that they're back here. That's why, as governor, we will spare no expense. We will lift any burden to make sure every veteran has a roof over their heads. We'll make sure that we set up a toxic burn pit registry in the state of Texas for all returning veterans. And based on what those Vietnam-era veterans have told us, who said, listen, we waited 40 years after our service for our exposure to Agent Orange to be treated as the presumptive condition that caused the cancers and the conditions and the diseases from which so many of us died, which provided problems for our families and our kids. We're not going to wait 40 years for this generation right now. And if you don't want to receive an opioid, we're going to make sure in Texas it is legal to buy marijuana and cannabis. Ladies and gentlemen, I am for the school teacher, the school counselor, the school board, those men who literally sacrifice and serve every day in one of the toughest positions at one of the toughest moments in our history. 2 years of pandemic, 2 years of classroom learning loss, 2 years with those kids in front of them who may have very well lost their grandparents, whose folks may have lost their job, whose family may have lost their home, and yet you are there to serve them, to connect with them, to make sure that they're okay, literally to keep them alive right now. I'm going to make sure that I listen to you when you tell me that you're struggling, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, when you really just want to focus on one job, unlocking the lifelong love of learning within every mind of every child in every classroom. We're going to make sure that we acknowledge in Grayson County, your teachers are underpaid by $14,000 a year against the national average. We're going to listen to you when you tell us that the STAR test does nothing to effectively prove make sure that we recognize the service of those retired teachers who gave the best years of their lives to the children of this community. Here's what we do. We raise the pay so that every teacher works just one job, the most important job in that classroom, in that library, in that counselor's office. We ensure that there's a cost of living adjustment every single year for those retired teachers who haven't seen one since 2004. We canceled the STAR test in the state of Texas. And we have a partner in Austin because my TEA commissioner will be a classroom teacher who knows what she's talking about. And she knows education policy in the state of Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, I am for the child who's about to walk in to that classroom in a matter of weeks. It's less than 1 week until the El Paso Independent School District, where all 3 of my kids go to school, will be attending the first day of classes. It's been more than 8 weeks since that shooting in Uvalde, where 19 kids were slaughtered at point-blank range with a weapon originally designed for use for war in combat, intended to be able to penetrate an enemy's helmet at 500 yards. Those kids were not at 500 yards, nor were they wearing a helmet. Their brains, their soft tissue, everything that was struck was pulverized. Their parents had to claim their bodies by describing the shoes that they were wearing because there was nothing up here to identify. More than 8 weeks later, and this governor has done nothing to make my kids or your kids safer going into that classroom, didn't call a special session. Didn't take it to the NRA or the gun lobby, didn't stand up for the people in our community, didn't argue for the common sense solutions that most of us, Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, non-gun owners alike, can get behind. That's why as governor, I'm going to make sure that we call that special session for universal background checks, for red flag laws, for raising the minimum age of purchase to 21 years old. To shoot those teachers who've already sacrificed so much for them. I'm for that 18-year-old who's just leaving the foster care system right now, who's emerging from that system, chances are, more damaged than when he first went in. 32,000 kids in our custody and care in a state whose GDP is $2 trillion a year. And tonight, some of them will be sleeping in those CPS offices, atop the desks, underneath the tables, out there in the hallways. You and I as Texans have lost the lives of more than 100 who are in our custody and care since the year 2020. A federal judge named Judge Jack has warned the governor for the past 6 years. These kids are deeply damaged when they go into this system because we are not paying attention. We're not supporting those CPS caseworkers. We're not making these kids the priority that they need to be. I'm going to make sure that if we take the god-awful step of removing you from your family, that we spare no expense, provide every resource to make sure that you are going to do well, that you live up to your full potential, that you can fulfill your promise. You're just as important to us in that foster care system as any other child in the state of Texas, and we're going to start acting now. I am for the immigrant, for that man who wants to come to this country to work a job that perhaps no one in this country is willing to work. For that man or woman who has brought their child with them because to stay in El Salvador or Honduras or Guatemala might meet certain death for that 12-year-old or that 15-year-old. Why in God's name would you travel 2,000 miles, most of it on foot, some of it atop a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, if that was the only way to save your child's life? Why would you take that 11-year-old's hand and pull him up into that trailer of that tractor in San Antonio where you would both die unbeknownst to you? You don't do it for kicks. You don't do it to steal anybody's job. You don't do it to take other people's benefits. You do it because you probably have no other choice. I want to make sure that instead of political stunts, building walls, or putting migrants on buses and sending them to D.C., or involuntarily activating 10,000 members of the Guard here in Texas, we focus on solutions like a guest worker program that allows you a safe, legal, orderly path our asylum laws and make it possible for people to claim refuge. If you want to join a family member and you want to do it the right way, today you might wait 20 years in line to be able to do that. What if Texas led the way on the first rewrite of our immigration laws since Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States, and made sure we could focus on doing it legal, safe, and orderly every single time? And for those who want to come and harm us by trafficking fentanyl or any illegal drug, those who traffic in human beings, we will focus on you because we've taken care of everyone who has a legitimate reason and purpose to be in this country. We're more focused, we're more precise, we're more vigilant, we're more effective at keeping our fellow Texans safe. Can you all get behind me on this one? Diabetes, or the flu, or some form of curable cancer, but doesn't have health insurance, doesn't have Medicaid, because we're one of the last states not to accept expansion. We're losing out on $10 billion a year of our own federal income taxes that we've sent up to D.C. and are just waiting there and now being distributed to every other state almost except for ours. Check this out. Our border states, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, 3 of those 4 with Republican governors and Republican state legislatures have chosen to expand Medicaid. It connects more people with care. It keeps more rural hospitals and clinics open. And the kicker, for those of you who do not like your rising property tax bill, it lowers our property taxes because we're no longer on the line for indigent care in our county hospitals as government unassigned Medicaid expansion into law in this state. I'm for the Texan who just wants to be treated with respect. That means that your right to vote is not infringed based on where you live, the color of your skin, your country of national origin. This, ladies and gentlemen, today is the toughest state in the nation in which to cast a ballot or to register to vote. The men and women who wore the uniform that I spoke about at the outset, they provided this democracy for us. The civil rights and voting rights marchers of the 50s and 60s expanded it to include anyone, regardless of the differences between us. We have inherited their service, their struggle, their sacrifice. What we do with this inheritance will determine our future and define us in the eyes of our kids forever. We can either squander it and be the generation after 246 years that lost it, or we can be the one that stood up to be counted, fought for it, and won the day at the end of the day. You would be remiss. Just like today, in 1972, abortion was illegal in this state. But there was no one from outside who rode to the rescue. We didn't wait on a knight in shining armor to save the day. It was Texas women. Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade was a Texan. So was Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington from Abilene, Texas, the 2 Texas women attorneys who successfully argued her case before the all-male Supreme Court in '72, winning Roe versus Wade in 1979. It will be Texas women today who win the right to make sure that every woman makes her own decisions about her own body, her own future, and her own everything. We don't stop there. If we have anything to do with it, every woman will earn what every man makes for doing the same job at the same value. She will work the same thing. What we are for, what binds us together, I hope before we're Republicans or Democrats, and first and foremost as Texans, as Americans, as human beings, is being there for one another, fighting for one another, standing for one another, regardless of the differences. We are for the big things that we want to accomplish, our ambitions, our aspirations, the hard work that we're willing to put in order to achieve them. We are not this hatred. We are not this fear. We are not this division being sown by the man in the highest position of power. We are not his chaos. We're not his cruelty. We're not his incompetence, nor are we his corruption. Look at last February. In the energy capital of the world, he couldn't keep the lights on, or the heat running, or the water flowing because our pipes froze. He allowed his donors and buddies to make $11 billion in profit over the span of 5 days, while people were freezing to death in their homes, dying of carbon monoxide poisoning in their garages trying to stay warm, burning up as they tried to keep alive by burning their furniture in the fireplace. More than 700 Texans lost their lives in that man-made disaster. And to add insult to injury, not only has he still not fixed the grid, he's passed the cost on to you and to me in higher utility bills, on average $45 a month more per household. When you add to that the increase in property taxes since he's been elected, $20 billion more. When you add to that his shutdown of the U.S.-Mexico border that cost us more at the grocery store, that liberal rag, the Wall Street Journal, talked about Greg Abbott's $5 avocados. This guy is the single greatest driver of inflation in the state of Texas. His incompetence, his cruelty, his corruption is killing each and every second. We must commit ourselves today to winning this election on the night of November 8th. And as I told you the story of Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey and Jane Roe, it's a reminder that we are capable of doing big things. We've done even bigger things against greater odds before. That's the metal we're made of here in the state of Texas. But even if you don't yet believe, and you are a doubting Thomas, or you know one in your life, and you need some proof, let me lay this on you as well. So far, 8 months into this campaign, we have recruited more than 80,000 volunteers to knock on doors, to make phone calls, to write letters, to personally connect with the people who are going to decide the outcome of this election. It is the largest volunteer political force that we've ever seen in the history of the state of Texas. If that weren't enough, thanks to your generosity, the contributions that you're making, especially from school teachers who are the largest group of contributors to this campaign. In this last 4-month reporting period, we took in more than 500,000, more than 500,000 contributions. We raised $27 million, $3 million more than the sitting governor of the state of Texas. And look, who knows about polling in this age, but the gold standard, they say, decent, is Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac took the measure of the Texas governor's race in December. We haven't even been in the race for a month. They found us down 15 points to Greg Abbott. It looked pretty insurmountable to a lot of people in Texas and a lot of people from outside the state. Well, they took that measure again a little more than 3 weeks ago. We're just down 5 points. We made 10 points off. And we're in the right direction. The momentum is on our side. All that we lack, all that we need at this moment to bring them home, to close the deal, to get this done, to win the election, to make sure that we're more than a match for this moment, and that we can pass the judgment of our children, who will want to know what we did at this moment of truth. All that we lack is you. If you're willing to do more than just vote, and that's critically important that you vote, but if you want to reach the other people in Grayson County who may say, you know what, I don't think this O'Rourke guy can win this county, so I'm just not going to vote. You go to their door and say, you know, maybe he won't win this county, but your vote might help him to win statewide. There may be someone who says, look, I'm a school teacher, and my salary relative to inflation has gone down and down and down. It doesn't get better no matter what I do say. There is a guy out there who's willing to fight for you day and night. We need your vote in this race. To that Republican mother-in-law of yours. Everybody's got one. Say, look. You know, those who voted for Abbott last time had no idea what they were in for. They didn't know that he would become so extreme, that he'd ride the fringe of his own political party, that he'd outlaw abortion with no exception for rape or incest, that he'd sign permitless carry, the law that allows anyone to carry a loaded gun on our streets without a background check or any training or any vetting whatsoever. This crazy idea that we would pursue the parents of transgender kids for child abuse in the state of Texas, that would push a Don't Say Gay bill in this very state in the 21st century. I didn't know that that's what I was buying when I voted for him. Look, it's not your fault. And I don't even, by the way, think that Greg Abbott is an evil guy or that he wants all these bad things to happen. I just think that, for whatever reason, he's unwilling or incapable of doing the things that are going to improve our lives and make these changes for the better. So reach out and listen to the Republicans in your life. Tell them they have a home in this campaign for world-class schools, great jobs, the ability to expand Medicaid, and to look after the people who made this country great in the first place, like the veterans who wore the uniform of the United States of America. Are you all willing to join us on this? Hold it high, be proud of who you are and that you're here. Let folks know that we can sign you up to host a canvass. That means people meet at your house or the cafe down the street or the bar after work on Friday, and you go and knock on doors together to go meet and listen to those voters that we need to win here in Grayson County. If you don't want to host a canvass, but you want to show up at one, and you're willing to put in the work, we want you to sign up with one of these volunteers in a yellow jacket. If knocking on doors is not your thing because you don't like being out in 104-degree heat, maybe I don't blame you, but it's going to take some sacrifice if we're going to do this. But if you want to be on the phone, if you want to write letters, if you even want to text people from the comfort of your couch, we've got a job for you as well. If we want to win this, if you want to feel so good on the night of November 8th because you know you left it all on the field and we won, and you wake up on the night with the most glorious hangover you have ever had in your life, I'm going to need you in this fight right now. All right, you guys in? You all in? We are now going to move into the question and answer portion of the program. I came to share with you what's on my mind. I also came to listen to you about what's on yours. Any question from anyone? Any suggestion, any idea, any criticism? I'm all ears. The only hope I have of serving Grayson County effectively as governor is to show up and listen to the people of Grayson County first. Cynthia Cano with the black hat, the white shirt right in front of me, class of 1990, Andrews High School in Northeast El Paso, has got a microphone. She will take it to you. Just raise your hand, and here we go.
All right, first question right here.
When you win the election, and you're not, chances are you're going to be working with the Republican side. How do you plan on overcoming that?
It's a great question. how do we get this ambitious agenda done when we may be working with a party from the other side of the aisle? First, I'm no stranger to that. 6 years on the House Veterans Affairs Committee when I was in Congress. Every one of those years, a Republican majority in the House in which I worked. 2 of those years, a Republican president. Only way I was to get anything of any significance done was to find a partner across the aisle and be willing to compromise, though I know that's a 4-letter word in American politics right now. But only by finding the common ground have I found we can move forward as a country. So expanding access to mental health care for veterans in this state and throughout this country. I wrote that bill with a Republican from Colorado, got it signed into law by the one human being with whom I agree on almost nothing, Donald J. Trump, and we opened up the door literally to the VA for veterans who've been denied before. So this agenda that I just talked about, if we just quickly go over it. Great schools, that means paying our teachers more, that means canceling the STAR test, that means being there for our retired teachers, counselors, and librarians. Not only is that good for big cities and areas represented by Democrats, but you look at what the average school teacher is paid in a Republican-represented part of the state, especially our rural and underserved communities. They have the most, literally, to gain by the outcome of doing the right thing. And I know that the public pressure and the popular sentiment is with it. That will be brought to bear on those representatives. We'll find willing partners across the table. On Medicaid, 24 hospitals in rural counties in Texas have shut down in the last 10 years. Bringing that $10 billion in annually does more good in rural Texas, perhaps, than it does anywhere else. There are some communities where there are no doctors, where they do have clinics and hospitals, but no obstetrics. If we want to make these the places that our young men and women, as they grow up in, want to stay in, or want to go back to, then we've got to make investments in that. Medicaid expansion is one of those issues where there is bipartisan support to get that done. Urban, rural, Democrat, Republican, and then this last one, great jobs. We want the best jobs in America found in Texas, but not just in some communities in Texas. Cannot tell you how many times I've been in Dallas, or Houston, or Austin, and someone says, I'm from El Paso, or I'm from Sherman, or I'm from Whitesboro, or I'm from some other part of the state which I would love to return to. I just cannot find the job that will allow me to afford to live there. In fact, when we were knocking on doors earlier, the gentleman who answered the door, Terry, there with his wife Jan, I said, what could I do as governor to make it better here? He said, give me some job opportunities in this community. We really need them right now. Tell me the Republican representative who's going to be against that, against the investment in roads, in broadband internet, in ensuring that we make it easier for people to create the jobs in the communities that folks are leaving right now. So this agenda is not just ambitious, it's not just aspirational, it's also deeply pragmatic, based on the things that I know that we can deliver once we win this election. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it.
Governor. I'm Russ James. I'm from Sanger. I've been in the trucking business for 42 years. I've been on that board an average of once every 2 weeks in my training experience. I might know a little bit about it. At any rate, you pointed out the enforcement folks, our neighbors that came up, that were found dead in an 18-wheeler. I'll point out 2 things. Number 1, it went through the Laredo area Border Patrol check. They have a an x-ray machine. When I was running down on a regular basis, that machine was down for 9 months. 9 months, folks. It didn't work. Now, that truck came through that station. The next stop is the DPS, Texas State Troopers, for all of y'all that don't know who DPS is. Right? Texas State Troopers. The way station at Atascosa on the south side of San Antonio. And guess what, brother? It was closed. Closed. Okay? When I come up and down through there, I'll bet that it's not open but once, maybe a month. As you know, Governor, DPS works for the governor.
Yeah.
Greg Abbott doesn't have a damn clue about what's going on down there on the board. He may have been there, but he hasn't been there many times I've been there. Okay? But you cannot run an enforcement division and run it closed. See what I mean?
Absolutely.
What are you going to do? And it's, I don't think it's a problem with funding. God knows we've got enough money in Texas. But what are you going to do in the ideas of securing the border to make sure that these things don't happen like that? Okay? Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for the information. This is why we do town hall meetings like this one, to learn what I just learned from you. I didn't know either of those things, about the number of times the DPS station is closed, about the fact that the Border Patrol at that inland inspection point has an x-ray machine that wasn't in use, it isn't in use often enough that it literally could have saved lives, could have stopped traffickers of human beings and of drugs alike, and kept us safer as a result. One of the things that's missing in this state right now, to your point, is accountability. You mentioned the DPS station along the border. I think about the dozens of DPS troopers outside of an unlocked door for 70 minutes while kids were being shot and bleeding to death on the other side of it, who not once went in to intervene and save their lives until 70 minutes had passed. There's got to be accountability. There's got to be justice. I am reflecting what I'm hearing from those parents in Uvalde. When it comes to the border, the fact that our governor has decided to focus on stunts instead of solutions, there's a real cost to that. It's the one the gentleman just described. It's also the 8 members of the Guard who have died during Operation Lone Star. 4 of them killed themselves on these involuntary activations. 4 others have died in questionable circumstances. None of them, by the way, were killed by immigrants coming in to this country. I don't deny that we have real challenges there. We do. The drug trafficking, the human smuggling, the fact that those coming in, we don't know if they're here to do us good or to do us harm, even though most of them are here to do better for themselves and for all of us. That's why I say, if we can focus on those who want to come here to work with a guest worker program, legal, orderly, safe, and quick, if we can focus on raising the per country caps and lowering the wait time to come here legally so you're not in line for 20 years and tempted to jump that line and get ahead of everybody else, if we can focus on legitimate claims for asylum and refuge in a country that is comprised of asylum seekers and refugees, the O'Rourke's sure benefited from it in the 19th century during the potato famine in Ireland. If we do all of that, that's 99% of the traffic that we're concerned about, that we've just wiped off the table as a problem. We then, like a laser, focus on those who want to traffic in things that will harm us or harm other people. And yes, let's use every tool at our disposal. The x-ray machines, the DPS way station, the 20,000 members of the Border Patrol, local law enforcement, state DPS troopers. We have the resources, as the gentleman just said. We just haven't had the accountability or the leadership or the political will to get this done. You've got my commitment to get it done. Thank you for being here.
Do you support the Second Amendment? Do you support domestic drilling to support our jobs here in Texas? Price of oil and gas is $4 and $6. Farmers cannot afford. It costs $1,000 to fill up a John Deere. We are selling our cattle because of the drought, because we can't afford the cost of the diesel. We can't afford to keep our farms going. So do you support the Second Amendment? Do you support addressing domestic drilling? And what are you going to do for the farmers? And you didn't say how are you going to fix the power grid. You can say you're going to do it.
Okay.
How are you going to do it?
Help me keep track of this, okay? We've got Second Amendment, we've got farmers and cattle ranchers, we've got oil and gas, and what was the 4th one? And the grid. How are we going to fix the grid? Okay, can you help me on this? So, first one is Second Amendment. Yes, it's in the Constitution. I believe in it. I'll defend it just as strongly as you will. All of us agree that the Second Amendment is an integral part of who we are as Americans, as Texans. Hopefully we also all agree the Second Amendment, just like every other constitutional right, is not unlimited in scope, right? Or else we would be walking around with bazookas and grenade launchers. We would still have machine guns, which we had in this country up until 1934, when this country, all of us decided there's going to be this line. On this side are going to be machine guns, on this side are going to be shotguns and hunting rifles and pistols and what we need in our homes for self-defense or out there to hunt or whatever we want to do with them. Nobody's business but ours. But we don't want to see people shot up with machine guns. We make a decision then. I just happen to believe, some of you feel differently, that an AR-15, an AK-47 designed to kill human beings in combat is on the other side of the line and should stay in combat. There are very reasonable people who come to a different conclusion. That's the genius of this country. We can feel differently about it, resolve the difference peacefully, try to find some common ground, and move forward there. The common ground that I find in Texas before us right now is at a minimum raising the age of purchase from 18 to 21, red flag laws, universal background checks. It won't prevent every instance of gun violence, but it will save more lives while allowing us to defend the Second Amendment. Second question is, am I for domestic oil and gas production? The answer is yes. I drove here in a Toyota Tundra today. For as long as I am burning hydrocarbons, I want them to come from the state of Texas. I want the jobs to be right here in the state of Texas. I want the state of Texas to secure our energy independence from the rest of the world. No more going to war in other parts of the world to secure our supply lines, our energy resources. Let's make sure that they come from this country, and when they come from this country, that they come from Texas. Let us at the same time expand our energy leadership by doing more on wind, on solar, on geothermal, on hydrogen, on battery storage, on the jobs and the opportunities that come from them. Because we also have an imperative to confront the climate crisis that we are now living through right now. The drought that you all are experiencing, where it is harder to raise these cattle, where it is harder to grow these crops. And in some cases, what you planted in generations before, your grandparents and parents, is not growing right now in this current generation. We understand the cost and the consequence of climate change. Let's protect the energy jobs that we have right now, especially at a time, as you mentioned, of rising gas and oil prices, at a time of invasion of Ukraine from Russia, where our allies are desperate for this resource and don't want to purchase it from Russia. Let's absolutely do everything we can to maximize what we have here. But let's also make sure that we're winning the war for the future of energy, and that happens right here in the state of Texas. The third question was on that ranching and on that farming that takes place here in this community and across the state of Texas. The points that you're bringing up remind me that where we are right now, and if we include West Texas and the Panhandle, is the source of the fuel, the food, the fiber that literally runs the Texas and the American economy. Cattle growers are struggling right now. The inputs for fertilizer, for feed, trying to find water at a time of drought, some of them are getting run out of business when it's compounded by the fact that you're at the mercy of corporations like these corporate slaughterhouses that continue to drive down the margins because we don't have any independent operators that you can sell to. We really have a problem right now. Regardless of who you vote for, the fact that you're in business is of value to us in the state of Texas. I'm going to make sure that we have your back, that we extend the ag exemption, that we support you as an independent producer, that we do everything we can to break up the monopolies on these slaughterhouses, ensure that we have independent, locally owned options for you. Because if you go out of business and you cannot pass this ranch or this farm down to your kids, to your grandkids, and it gets subdivided and turned into residential property or strip mall or bought up by the big corporate farmers and ranchers, all of us as Texans lose out. I'll do everything I can with you as my partner. You lead me on this. You understand it better than I do, but I want to make sure that I support you. Fourth and last thing, how are we going to fix the grid? Look, Beto, it's easy to criticize. It's much tougher to do something to fix it. Here's what I would do. Number one, we're going to weatherize and winterize the grid in Texas. Last February, gas literally froze at the wellhead in the state of Texas. We could not get into the generators who could spin off the electricity that otherwise would have kept those people who died alive. Second thing, we're going to connect our grid called ERCOT with the national grid. Those $11 billion that were stolen from us over 5 days in February by the energy traders and the pipeline companies, which by the way was illegal. There's a state statute that says when there's a declared emergency or disaster in the state of Texas, you cannot price gouge the people of the state, and specifically mentioned in that statute is fuel. Greg Abbott told his cronies in the business they can charge 200 times the going rate of gas. Those pipeline companies went to these utilities and they said, I know we had a deal to sell to you at X, but it's 200X or else. All of these utilities took the deal. Many went billions of dollars into debt. Some had to declare bankruptcy. All of them passed the cost on to you. As governor, I'm going to take these guys to court. I'm going to get $11 billion back.
I watched some of your town hall meetings. I watched some of the videos that you post and things. Generally, the way that I see it go in the past is someone may air out their grievance and their opinion, and then you'll give your opinion, your talking point. You're talking crap for a minute, you get a round of applause, and then the other person doesn't really ever get a rebuttal. Usually, you experience these. What happens is, as you get going, somebody will try to interrupt you. And the reason they do that is because they're afraid that they won't get their rebuttal. At the end of it. I know you've mentioned agreed to zero debates, I guess, for me, things like that. I'm asking if I can ask, there's two topics that I'd like to ask about, and whenever I go, you go. I won't interrupt you. I'm not gonna laugh in your face, berate, none of those things. I'd also ask the crowd, same thing. Please don't interrupt Mr. O'Rourke. Please don't interrupt me. Would you agree to this? What I want to know is, there's two things here, whether I'm smart enough, things like that. The topic that I'd like to bring up first is the Second Amendment. Again, I want to know where you and I disagree fundamentally. So, if I can ask you, in your interpretation, I would ask you to interpret the Second Amendment. And in your personal opinion, how do you interpret what the Second Amendment means, please?
Yeah, it is the right to own a firearm, to use it for purposes that we agree as Americans are reasonable, for hunting, for self-protection, for sport, for collection. As I said earlier, for just about any reason, as long as it does not affect my well-being, my safety, or anyone else in the community. And as you probably know, because you're versed in this, none other than Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia said that the Second Amendment, like the First Amendment, like any other constitutionally protected right, is not unbounded. We've all agreed on some common sense restrictions. No one can stand up in this room and yell fire and cause a panic if there is not a fire. That's not protected under the First Amendment. So that was my best shot. Feel free to come back.
Okay. Maybe can somebody pull up the Second Amendment text as far as trying to break it apart? It's just we can take very fast.
A well-regulated militia.
It's just that there's a lot of people here, and I want to make sure we get as many voices in. But if you have something on
Yeah, I'll give you mine.
yeah.
I'll give you mine. You agree, as far as the back. Would you agree that the Second Amendment was designed, at least it was written in, to prevent a tyrannical government?
No.
You don't believe, okay.
So in this, I'm glad you brought this up, because I've got this question before. We were mule shoe recently, and someone said, I believe that the Second Amendment allows me to rise up against my government. I feel like we settled that in 1865 at Appomattox. And I don't have but I understand, listen, I said this earlier about AR-15s, AK-47s. Reasonable people can come to different conclusions on this. If you feel that that's the purpose, I understand and respect your point of view. I feel very strongly the opposite.
You mentioned assault weapons, and I have a question as far as an assault weapon, would you, just so we're on common ground, would you define an assault weapon? Whatever the definition is, I'm fine with that, just so we're on common ground, please.
Yeah, so something like an AR-15, an AK-47, something with extended capacity where you can fire many, many rounds. If you all have not yet listened to the audio from Uvalde, listen to the audio from Uvalde, and listen to how quickly those rounds pop off into the bodies of those kids. Someone said, hey, you could walk in with a shotgun, you could walk in with a knife, you could walk in with a rock. You could do that. You wouldn't be able to do as much damage, kill as many people, and destroy their bodies to the degree that you couldn't revive them or resuscitate them. So I do agree. I think this is something where we have to work together as a state, as a country, and find out what those parameters are. If that weapon was originally designed for use as a firearm for hunting, or for self-defense in the home, I think that's quite a different category. So generally, that's how I approach it. Universal background check, and then let's make this the last one, just because I want to get some folks in. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, if Greg Abbott comes here and takes your questions the way that I take your questions here, we'll have a chance to do that too. But and we do have limited background checks in Texas. And I'll give you an example of the limited ones we do and the universal ones that we do not. So a month after someone drove 600 miles from Allen, Texas to El Paso and killed 23 of my neighbors with an AK-47, someone in Midland, Odessa walked into a gun store and tried to buy an AR-15, and he didn't pass the background check. That's great, it worked. We don't have a universal background check in Texas, which means that he could go to a private seller and buy the exact same kind of weapon, no questions asked, turn around and use that and kill 8 people in that community. Now, someone will say, well, criminals don't follow the law. I mean, we're not going to be able to avert every gun tragedy in the state. We can make it a lot harder, in some cases impossible, for people to do the things that they're doing. Universal would have covered that personal seller, private seller to private buyer. That's an example of expanding that to universal. If that makes sense.
So the second topic that
We're done.
okay, so my personal opinion, and I've heard you talking for your opinion. And in your opinion, you say that a woman ought to have full autonomy over her body. So in my personal opinion, anything after
Yeah, go over there.
In my personal opinion, anything after conception is murder. In my personal opinion. Now, again, with you said earlier.
We're going to make this the last question because we got to move on. But please.
So, in my opinion, if it was a woman choosing bodily autonomy, it would be her body that was aborted, not the baby's. So you mentioned aborting. And I'd like to ask at what point, in your opinion, is a child? At what point, in your opinion? Let's assume for a second, Mr. O'Rourke was.
Right, you've asked the question. We've been so generous with the time. We want to make sure Thank you for asking questions on two important issues. If you're looking for a technical or legal definition, the law of the land for the last half century has been before viability. The thing that makes the most sense to me, because I have met now so many women who have told me their stories. I met a woman in Fort Bend County with her 4-month-old child in the stroller before us, who was about to go in block walk for our campaign, who said, I'd always considered myself ardently pro-life. And then I was pregnant with this little guy, and I had the most complicated pregnancy in the world. I wasn't sure how I was going to make it. Knowing that the choice was mine, knowing that I had an option is what got me through and made me okay. She said, otherwise I don't know that I would not have taken my own life. I met others who told me that they had problems with their pregnancies, and their child was not going to make it, was going to die upon birth if they got to that point, and they made a decision with their doctor to terminate their pregnancy. For as many abortions as there are that many different stories and reasons that women have personally, privately, and very often painfully had to come to. So the best way that I can express this is I just trust a woman to make that decision for herself.
I'm a teacher and I work in a rural district 15 miles away, and I still don't make $60,000 a year, and I work 2 jobs in the summer. I have 1 week left of summer, and that's it, and I'm done.
And I just quit.
So I am not in a secure school. Our school is not secure. We have several activities and classes that our students go outside for. What can you do to help me help you?
Help our children.
Thank you for being here. And as someone else just said after you just asked your question, ultimately to help our kids. It's the only reason you do it. You don't do it for the money, clearly, or the fame, or the glory. You are answering a calling, and you're doing your best to deliver for them. In addition to the education and the instruction, which is paramount, right? I have found that you and so many other teachers are literally keeping kids alive at this moment. Talking to a middle school teacher, Laredo, she says part of the reason I'm against the STAR test, Beto, is right now, after 2 years of pandemic and learning loss and losing your grandparents and your folks losing their job, these kids, the level of suicidal ideation that I'm seeing in my school is off the damn charts. And I need to focus on making sure that they're okay. The teacher who says, listen, I had this kid in my class in Longview, and he came in every day, same dirty pair of jeans, same dirty white t-shirt, probably same dirty pair of underwear on underneath. He was ashamed of himself. He smelled bad. Out of my own pocket, I bought him a new set of clothes so on Monday he could hold his head high. The teacher who knows you've got free and reduced breakfast and lunch and buys that meal for you at the end of the day because she knows there's no dinner waiting for you at home. We have to have your back. The fact that you got to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet is an indictment on every single one of us who allows this to continue without change. It's why we've got to win this election. And you ask what can you do? What can you do so that we can raise your pay, make your classroom safe, treat you with respect for the cost of living adjustment every year when you retire, replace the STAR test with a diagnostic that actually works that you don't have to prepare for? The only way to get there is to win political power. The only way to get there is to win on the night of November 8th. The only way to do that, just be really clear with you all, I could raise all the money in the world, come up with the most brilliant television ads humankind has ever seen, have the greatest number of followers on Twitter and TikTok, and come up with these brilliant TikTok dances to boot. None of that is going to win the election if you're not willing to show up on those doors of those voters, have this conversation with them, say, I'm a school teacher who wants to deliver for your kids. Please vote for me in this election. I want them to vote for you more than I want them to vote for anything else. Only you showing up is going to get that done. And again, we've got volunteers here today who will gladly sign you up. Some folks have noticed that I'm perspiring through my shirt, and they feel a little warm. This is just a reminder of what Greg Abbott's Texas will be like in the summers when we cannot count on the grill. Okay? That's the only reason we got it up so warm in here. And they're going to come.
Room number two. Room number two.
This is room number 2.
You said on your campaign site that you plan on getting the disabled community's input on how to expand the implementation of the ADA. Can you expand on how you plan to do that, both individuals input and
Thank you so much. We're answering this question on the 32nd anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act into law. So thank you for raising this and elevating this. I mentioned we're dead last in the country in those who are covered by insurance. We're 51st in the nation in access to mental health care. Our largest providers are the county jail system right now. And I know from a sister with significant disabilities that the wait list to get state-supported services in Texas is 18 years long. We found out when she was 18 years old, she just graduated from high school. My mom goes in and they said, we'll see you in 18 years. I said, why didn't you tell me when she was 1 or 2 years old? We would have gone on it then. It's like there's a secret handshake involved in this state. We're also the most underfunded for Texans with disabilities and special needs right now. Tell me what that says about us when we lack not for resources or wealth or riches. We have more than almost any other place on the planet. We just failed to elevate those who need it the most, to profit those who need it the least. So here's what we do. We make sure we expand that Medicaid, bring in that $10 billion. We expand and at a minimum protect the waivers that exist for the home health care, for the treatment, for the therapy. We prioritize independence of living versus being institutionalized in the state of Texas wherever we can. We pay home health care attendants, which sometimes are necessary, more than $7.25 an hour. $15 an hour has got to be the new minimum wage in the state of Texas. We enforce the ADA. So that if there are literally barriers and obstacles in your way to get your education, to go to that job, to eat at that restaurant, to start that small business, to run for political office, to become a preacher in a church, we make sure that we enforce the law of the land. Civil rights are under attack in this country, unlike any time during my lifetime. The fact that they want to attack the civil rights of women, now they're threatening to attack the civil rights of those who marry same-sex partners in this state. It is the same with members of the community with disabilities in the state of Texas. I will be a champion for your civil rights, the civil rights of every Texan. If you ask who I'm going to listen to and work with, it is you and anyone else who wants to be part of the revolution. Thank you for being here.
Question more for us and for you, but with voters who are making single issue voters, abortion, gun control, or gun freedom, how do we convince our conservative neighbors and family members to not vote conservative people this next election with all the new extremism, like the GOP talking about taking back voting rights, taking back several things that happened in the 60s and 70s that gave to minorities and other groups of people.
Listen, I think it's a great question. It's clear to me that we're not just going to win this election with Democrats or with people who already agree with everything that I say. In fact, no two people will ever agree on everything all the time. I've been married for 17 years, and I know that for a fact. So by listening, by that Republican or that single issue voter that you're talking about, what's most important to you in your life? Let me see if there's some common ground there. I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had, including one, Cynthia, that we just had in the corner, with someone who stood up and he said, listen, I disagree with you on your position on AR-15s and AK-47s. I said, okay, I get it. Tell me where we do agree. I said, could you get behind a universal background check? Oh yeah. Could you get behind a red flag law? Well, that makes all the sense in the world to me. Could we raise the minimum age of purchase to 21? I can get behind that too. You know, there are people, I just met a gentleman who's got a son in junior high. We were just in a small town on the way here eating sauerkraut and schnitzel and sausages. And this gentleman heard I was in town, he wanted to come meet me, and I think wanted to talk through the Second Amendment issue. And he said, look, I've got a son in junior high right now. I'm concerned about the issue. Let's listen to one another. One of the capacities we have that probably most of the animal kingdom does not is this power of empathy and connection and kindness and compassion. And don't confuse that stuff for weakness for a second. I think that's the strongest way to be a human being. If we have the courage and the strength of our convictions, then we have no problem listening to somebody or answering questions, multiple questions from somebody who disagrees with us. And in that exchange, I bet you we're going to find some common ground. And that person's going to say, you know what? He's not my enemy. She's not against me. They care about the same things that I do. They come at it a little bit of a different way, but here's this much that I think we can agree on. So I have found that to be so successful, and there's no better way to do that than doing it in person. I can't do that on television. I cannot do that online or through Twitter. I can do that in this room. I can do that at someone's door. I can do that on a telephone call. So if you're interested and want to be part of this, we would love to have you as a volunteer. It's critical if we're going to be able to do this. Thanks for asking the question.
We're going to have time for three more.
Three more.
Hello, Kevin.
You're on, yeah. Just hold it close.
First and foremost, I'm a teacher.
Thank you.
And I am frightened about the politics involved in the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. I teach U.S. history. I can't teach U.S. history when they call slavery involuntary. But what the hell are you going to do about it when you've been elected, sir?
It's amazing to me. We talked about we are a people not founded on fear. We're not small. We are unafraid of the future. We should be unafraid of the past. We have an extraordinarily rich story here in the state of Texas, from the indigenous people who preceded, the people who came from outside, those who immigrated, those who were brought here through slavery involuntarily. We helped to build the greatest state and the greatest nation that the world has ever known. And it has not been without moments that cause us some shame right now. It doesn't mean that we have to be ashamed of ourselves. It means that we have to look at that history, and that should prompt us not to make the same mistakes going forward. This challenge on voting rights, let me tell you something this gentleman may not be allowed to teach in his school. This attack on voting rights that we have today, it's nothing compared to the attack that we had in 1923. In that year, the Texas state legislature declared that if you were black, you could not vote in the state of Texas. It was not, to be clear, how many jelly beans are in the jar, can you recite the Texas state constitution, have you paid your poll tax, can you pass this literacy test, literally in black and white, except that if you were black, you could not vote in the Democratic Party primary. There was, at the time, no Republican Party to speak of in the state of Texas. The next year, in 1924, Dr. Lawrence Nixon in El Paso, Texas, a black physician, nonetheless paid his poll tax necessary in order to vote, went to fire station number 5, his regular polling place, presented the receipt to the election judge, who knew him by name because he'd been there every single election before until his vote was outlawed. And the election judge says, Dr. Nixon, you know I can't let you vote. And Dr. Nixon says, I know you can't, but I've got to try. And so he sued. He took the case to the federal bench in El Paso, Texas. He lost the decision. He appealed it all the way up to the Supreme Court. He won not one, but 2 signal Supreme Court victories, ultimately integrating our elections and paving the way for the 1965 Voting Rights Act signed by the first Texas president, Lyndon Baines Johnson. I am so, because we're in a church, darn proud of Dr. Lawrence Dixon. I'm so proud of Thelma White, who 10 years after our elections were integrated, in 1954 graduated from the all-black Douglas High School in El Paso, the only high school she was allowed to attend, tried to enroll at Texas Western College, was denied based on the color of her skin, took her case to a federal bench in Texas, assisted by a little-known attorney named Thurgood Marshall, won that decision, integrated all of higher education forevermore in the state of Texas. Thelma White, Lawrence Dixon, so many extraordinary stories and people who are part of our past. We learn their names, their stories. I guarantee you we're going to have a better future. I'm going to trust you in the classroom to teach the history of this state. Thank you.
Last 2 questions are
Room one.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
So I'm a union electrician. I'm in the IBEW. And I want to know how you feel about unions, and I want to know how you can help strengthen unions in Texas. Because a lot of times I got to travel with my family because the wages down here aren't as high as they are up north. The benefits aren't as good. And right to work is killing our labor unions. And how can you help me help you to fix this?
Thank you for the question. I mentioned earlier, I want to see the best jobs United States of America found right here in the state of Texas. And I want those jobs not to just be found in the obvious places. I want them to be here in Grayson County. I want them to be in El Paso County. I want them to be in Pampa and Dumas and Muleshoe and Amarillo. I want them to be in the places that are all too often and maybe always forgotten, taken for granted, written off altogether. I know what that's like growing up in the westernmost of the 254 counties of Texas. Today, to the gentleman's point, there are more Texans who work for less than a living wage, more people who work for less than a living wage. It means you got to work a second or a third job or you're dependent on public assistance than in any other state in the United States of America. So-called quote-unquote right to work means that it's hard for you to organize with your fellow workers, to use the leverage of the value that you provide for that organization or employer to get better wages, better working conditions, safer conditions, better outcomes for the public and your customers or whoever it is that you ultimately serve. I want us to become a right to organize state. I want wages to I want workplace safety. I want you to be more proud. We were talking to someone yesterday in Quanah, and as I did today in this community, I asked the gentleman, how do we make things better from the state of Texas for you in Quanah? And he said, if you want to find an electrician, if you want to find a plumber, if you want to find a carpenter, you got to go to DFW and you got to bring them into our community. Plenty of smart people in Quanah, Texas. Why can't we make this happen? Sometimes we're made to feel we didn't go to a 4-year college, we're a failure. Well, what about an IBEW apprenticeship where you spend 5 years earning money while you learn that trade, graduating to become a journeyman, and earning 6 figure salaries in this state or anywhere in this country that you want to travel? Those are the kinds of high skill, high wage, high value jobs that we want to see in Texas. And check this out, we got a question earlier about energy. The AFL-CIO, the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, is a member of it, came up with a Texas Energy Jobs Plan. It creates more than 1 million high-paying jobs in the state, every single one of them union jobs. The plan was written by electricians and pipe fitters and steel workers and plumbers and communication workers to make sure that we are literally at the table as we are writing the future. And those jobs are around renewable energy, they're around traditional energy in Texas, they're around energy efficiency so that we retrofit buildings like this one so they stay a little bit cooler in the summer, a little bit warmer in the winter without having to use as much energy or electricity. This is the right thing to do on every single level. On the wages that we want to work, on the quality of life that we want to have, on the purpose and fulfillment that we all crave in the job that we work, and our ability to save this planet before it's too late. So I stand by you, with you, in the work of positivity. Thank you so much for being here.
This is going to be our last question, but if you'd like to stay afterwards and take a picture or say hello, we can definitely do that. We're going to be in room 2.
You know what, Cynthia? Let's do this. I'm calling an audible.
Yes,
I'm calling
you're
an
the
audible.
boss.
Let's before we do any kind of individual pictures, let's take a room 1 picture and a room 2 picture, and then we can all get together. And
And I gotta say, from being in both rooms, this is a little
don't
hotter.
say it.
It's
Okay.
a little hotter. It's just a little bit. We're doing good again.
I thought you were going to say which room looked better.
No.
So it seems every time we get a 10-cent raise, rent goes up probably $200, $300. So I was just wanting to know how are you planning to, I guess, combat minimum wage against the cost of living?
Couple things here. So the question's about rent going up, and if I might just want to extend it to property taxes going up as well, because you're paying for property taxes through your rent right now. That property owner, he or she's not eating it, they're passing it right through to you. You're seeing that in higher rents. I mentioned the higher utility bills, higher prices at the grocery store, all connected to decisions that Greg Abbott has made. So is your rent. Let me explain. When we want to pay teachers more, right now we depend on you as a local property taxpayer to fund their salary increase. In the good old days, it used to be the state of Texas that would kick in at least 50%. Right now, it's 60% local property taxpayer, 40% state of Texas. There is a Republican state representative who has filed a bill that would return it to a 50-50 ratio, lowering the pressure on property tax owners, property taxpayers, lowering your bill, in other words, and ensuring that the state is doing more while still paying teachers more than they're receiving state. Another problem we have, you as a property owner, you as a renter, are paying your fair share. Many corporations in Texas are not. You go down to Tarrant County, the average appraisal increase in that county is 50% year over year. You may have seen something similar to that in Grayson County. So if you own a home, that home is now 50% higher in value. Your taxes are going to go up significantly. Walmart, one of the largest corporations on planet Earth, their average appraisal decrease in Tarrant County was 6%. Why? They can afford to hire the attorneys, the lobbyists that can contest their valuation, making it so that they don't pay their fair share of property taxes into our community. We are going to make sure when we win this election that everyone, especially corporations, millionaires and billionaires, pay their fair share so that the burden is a little bit lighter on everybody else. But in addition, that, by the way, will raise anywhere from $3 to $6 billion more every year into our local budgets. In addition, when we legalize marijuana and stop spending $500 million locking people up, and we raise another $500 million by taxing the controlled sale of that substance, we're going to be able to put that into property tax relief or straight into public education salaries. We're going to reduce the pressure you have as a renter. And the last thing, you mentioned what it's like to try to meet that rent when you're still earning the same salary, in some cases $7.25 an hour. We're going to do everything we can to raise the minimum in Texas to $15. Below that, no one should be working. If you're full-time employee, we want you to just work in one job, not two, not three. We want you to be able to afford to live just where you live today. Thank you for being here. All right, I want to thank everybody in Grayson County for joining us today. If everyone would just stay where they are, we're going to take a quick picture of this room first, and then just give us 30 seconds. We'll come right back and take this picture in this room next. Okay, here we go.
Then we're on with a little friendly competition. Let's see who can yell a little bit louder. Think of your room one. All right. I think this room might be a little louder. Y'all are stepping a little bit.
I'll get this picture. Sure.
I'd like you to cut that gentleman in the purple and white shirt right out of this.
Whitesboro, on the count of three.
Just say.
That's why we started.
Just say.
It's easy to do.
Sorry,
I got it.
Count of three. 1, 2, 3. Very good. All right, let's go check out room 2. And then again, after we take this picture, if y'all would like to go to room number 2, come out here and say hi or take a picture, you can do that. All right, y'all ready? Oh, this group is ready. They are ready. All right, did y'all hear them? They were pretty loud. On the count of 3, it's Whitesboro. Y'all ready? All right, let me see. Man, this is a good-looking group. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Whitesboro! Wow, that's all you. I don't know. What do you think? A tie? It's a tie. All right, come on up over here. Where's your water?